Welcome to Make It Plain from Make Plain Jesus Ministries, where we take biblical truths in everyday situations and break them down to be as plain as possible. So, stay tuned and enjoy the broadcast.
Welcome to the next episode of Make It Plain. We are excited to be able to put these together on a regular basis. And for me personally, it is a great experience to be able to just share simple truths. And the reason is, we often make things so complicated. Just giving directions at times, rather than just saying turn left and you're there, we will say go 500 feet, turn left. Then go down a little bit farther. Then you come to another merging part, then a little bit farther, then another merging road, rather than just saying keep straight and you're fine. We as people have a tendency to add complexity to the things that are just so simple. So in this broadcast of Make It Plain, I want to spend just a few minutes talking to you and sharing this concept of the ant mentality. The ant mentality. This whole concept really is something that just kind of blossomed out of just reading from Proverbs recently. And it just reminded me of some simple observations that one of the wisest men who ever lived, Solomon, even talked about observations that he saw just in the natural life and just looking around at nature, and applied some of the principles that he saw to everyday life. And see, isn't that the whole point? We're asking questions on how should we live and what's our purpose and how should we succeed? What's the ways in doing that? And just these simple truths are things that will help propel us along. So think about it for a minute. The ant mentality. You know, sometimes we look, especially if it's warm in your particular part of the earth and where you live, and then you begin to see these little things that seem to come in the smallest of holes and find their way into buildings and places where you really don't want them, but they're able to get there and go about their business. And of course, us as homeowners or business owners or just people, we're trying to find ways to keep them out because it's annoying. And so people go through and spend all kinds of money trying to find traps and other ways to keep them out. But if you pause for a minute of just getting to the point of getting frustrated with them because they seem to be appearing at times when you really don't want them to, and just look at what they do. It's really interesting how they parade from one point to the next. They always seem to be about a particular purpose. And so when I look at that and I relay that to the observations that Solomon had, it brings up some great points that apply to business, applies to home life, and it just applies to everything that you do during the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, decades, and even farther. And so think about it for a minute. In the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, in verse number 6, it begins, it's just a simple thing that Solomon begins to share. And he talks about, go to the ant, you sluggard, is what he says. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. And then he just asks the question, how long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise up from your sleep? A little slumber, and a little folding of hands to sleep. And so he begins to go on and just talk about how the laziness, if you will bring poverty upon you. But for the ant, he's right in this. He's correct in his observation. When you look at an ant, I've never seen, and if you have, you really have to let me know, but I've never seen a group of ants where everybody's working and one or two are just sitting on the side as if they're chilling, relaxing, and watching everyone else work. I've never seen just one going to the point where it's just staring and just not even interested, where all the others are still working right beside them. I've just never seen that. And so all of them that I've ever seen, no matter where I've seen ants, they're all working for a particular cause or purpose. In fact, it's as if they all know that they each have a purpose and they focus on their particular purpose rather than saying, I want to do the other ant's purpose, or the ant up front, why are you in front instead of me? And it's interesting because they all work together to achieve whatever goal is really needed. So whether it is getting to the next food source, whether it is getting to the next destination, whether it is building their home environment, whatever it is, whether it's taking over your house, right? Whatever it is, they work together to make sure it comes to pass. And so they're also very good at understanding the seasons in which they're in. So in preparation for winter, they're steadily working, steadily gathering, steadily storing away, steadily doing all that they need to prepare for that. During the summer, there are things that they're working on, or spring in preparation for the summer. There are other activities and things they're doing where they know that it's time to go above ground more so and be out and about and getting the things that they need. What if we looked at our lives, our goals, our businesses, our activities the same way? You see, there's this concept, and I'm going to spring this on you, if you will. There's this concept that exists, and it really is this whole concept of reaction versus strategy. Reaction versus strategy. Most of us, because of the volume of things that we are responsible for, the schedules that we accept, and the directions in which we take ourselves, we often find ourselves in positions where we are reacting to everything. Reacting just to stay above your head above water. Reacting to whatever the last person asked for you to do. Reacting because you're looking at someone's impression and you see that they want something else, but there's not really much thought going into it. It's just reacting. Our child wants this. Our relative wants that. Our neighbor wants that. Our homeowners association wants. And you keep on going down the list. And so before you know it, so much time has passed because it has been focused on reaction. But I would tell you that's not the best way to live your life, because reaction never lets you look in front of you. Reaction lets you look immediately right where you are, and that's all you can see. You literally can't see the forest because you're looking at one tree and you're reacting to the needs of that tree and the tree right next to it. And so when you think about life itself, we all have to get out of purely reacting. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. There are times that you have to react to something that you couldn't see coming. And that's part of life. But I'm talking more than that. I'm speaking on living a life of reaction. Because that means that you can't develop. That means that you can't even plan. You see, strategy is the way to go to the extent that you can strategize, meaning you're planning ahead, looking ahead about where you want to go or what you would like to accomplish. And then you're putting the strategy in place on how to get there. And once that strategy is in place, then you get to execute. Now, I told you briefly about the challenges or the shortcomings of relying purely on reaction. And I would encourage you, even advise you, to not live your life that way going forward. But there's some things about the strategic side here that we also need to understand. So when I relate it back to the original story of the ants, their strategy is preparing enough food and everything else they need so that during the winter months they're fine. And in the spring months, getting ready to set up their actual place of living and doing the things that they need to do for the hot summer months, and which is probably their heyday or their most active time. So they have a strategy and a plan of execution on how they're going to do it, and their particular hive or place where they live, all of those folks will make sure everything is taken care of. Now, beyond that, on the strategic side, when it deals with us, we have to think about a few things, or at least a couple of things. One is, where are we trying to go? What's that plan? Because you can't put a strategy together unless you've at least thought about what the goal is or the destination. And I would tell you a lot of people haven't thought that far. So right now you need to ask yourself, what is that plan? What is that direction? What is that goal that you're trying to reach? Secondly, is once you have that, then begin to figure out strategically how to get there, how to accomplish it. Maybe your goal is that you want to be in the music ministry at your church somewhere, but you've never really sung in front of people before. So part of what you do is go over the songs that you heard them sing and make sure you're familiar with it. Understand where your voice range is, because that's helpful, right? And then look at how they're projecting so you understand how that works. And then maybe you sing something, karaoke or something at home in front of a family or friend, so that way you start to get used to being in front of people. So that's the strategy on how to get to your goal of being on the music ministry. Maybe it is that you want to get to the point of being a professional athlete, and that is your goal. Well, in order to get there, you've got to set up your strategy. And based on your age, you figure out what are the qualities and abilities you should have. How much strength should you have? What speed should you have? What knowledge should you have? And then from there, it's like, well, what real games have you been in? And what other places do you need to go to get the exposure? And all those types of things, that's part of your strategy of lining that up, and then you have to execute and actually do it. And so look at it that way. So you've got a plan, you set up your strategy, and now you got to focus on execution. You see, that's the part that many people do not accomplish. So when folks get to the point of realizing they've got to set a strategy, and they realize, well, first I got to set whatever my goal is, or what am I planning to do, and then do the strategy. I've run across so many people, and I would underline this particular point, where they come up with a plan, or a goal rather, and they may even come up with a strategy, but it never goes farther. That's why there are so many people that said, hey, that company took my idea, because 20 years ago, I already had that thought. But yet the issue is, that company took the idea that they came up with, and they put it into a strategy, and then they did something profound, which means execute on the strategy, which means actually do something with it. Countless people have ideas that go in the graveyards. And they go in the graveyards because they've never done anything with it. They've never put life in it. They've never put any kind of effort beyond, that's a great idea. And so when you think about the ants, they're very good with actually executing their strategy. Some of the successful business folks that you know have been pretty good at making sure that they've executed the strategy. So let me ask you this question. Do you really have the ant mentality? Have you ever executed your strategy? Have you ever gone forward and taken the idea, the direction, and transformed that into action? Because if you do, then you can see the plan come about, the successful strategy that has been executed being realized into the product or the position or whatever the outcome is that you're expecting. I want you to go forward from this day and make sure that you have the ant mentality. I know that when you think about ants going forward, you'll look at them differently. You'll look at them and say, okay, They have something that maybe I am not harnessing. And it will remind you every time you see an ant. So take this ant mentality and live your life to a successful end such that you will have all these dreams come to pass. And then others will look at you and say, you now have the idea executed that they thought about in the past but never did anything with. So that's the simple truth for you to remember today. That's how we're making it plain so that you can add it to your life. We hope this has been a rewarding time for you, and just continue to think about this, and we hope to talk to you really soon.